of a failed abortion. In 1977, Melissa's 19-year-old mother had left a hospital in America, believing that the toxic saline solution she'd been given over a 5-day period when she was 8 months pregnant had aborted her baby. In fact, unbeknown to her, she'd delivered a baby that was still alive. Melissa was adopted into a loving family, but after learning about her unlikely birth, she spent nearly 2 decades searching for answers and discovered that her guilt-ridden biological mother hadn't wanted to have the termination in the first place. Melissa and her birth mother have now been reunited. Let's take a look now at what Melissa says when she felt she first found out what had happened.
Oh, it affected me in a huge way. I don't think anybody's ever prepared for this kind of news. And to be 14 and really just struggling with who I was in the first place, this news was absolutely devastating. So not long after I learned the truth about my life, I really turned my pain upon myself. So developed an eating disorder, struggled with alcohol abuse, poor dating relationships, didn't want to be me, in all honesty. I had never heard of anybody like me years ago. Of course, now I know that there are many survivors like me, but back then it was a really lonely, painful place to be.
And how did you find out?
My parents ended up having to tell me. It was really a complete mistake. My older sister became pregnant and was considering an abortion. And so my parents had told her about my survival so that she would understand the consequences of all the decisions that she was considering. And so my sister actually let it slip to me in the middle of an argument. She actually yelled out to me. She said, Melissa, at least my biological parents wanted me. And I couldn't understand those words. And she is the one who actually encouraged me to approach our parents that night for the truth about my life. And, I never saw that kind of news coming.
You decided to try to trace your birth family at 19. So you wanted to find the woman who had tried to abort you all those years earlier. It was complex, it was tricky. Tell me about when you first made contact with your birth mother.
It was complex. It took me over 10 years to find them. My biological mother and I didn't finally connect until a little over 5 years ago now. And what I learned through that experience is that there were even more secrets about my survival that I didn't know and my adoptive parents didn't know. And the biggest secret truly is that my birth mother had spent over 30 years of her life believing that I had died that day at the hospital. She was not told that I survived. It was kept a secret from her. I was placed for adoption without her ever knowing. She never knew if it was a little boy or a little girl she had delivered in that abortion. And she had lived with such incredible regret and heartache. And so we started to communicate by email about 5 years ago and shared information, built walls of trust and love with one another before we met face to face for the first time about 2 years ago now.
And what was that like?
Absolutely surreal. It's one of those things that's hard to really describe to people, except, I don't know if you've ever been in the midst of an experience and you know that it was meant to be that way and that it's just one of those defining moments of your life. I will never forget meeting her and seeing her pain. Her pain haunted me for a very long time after that. But now I get to also experience her joy. When we moved to Kansas City, which is where we live here in the United States, when we moved here 5 years ago, what we didn't know is that my birth mother actually lives in this very same city. And so it's allowed us to forge this relationship. We connect on a regular basis. We see each other as often as we possibly can. One of my half-sisters lives here also with her children. And so now my biological family is a huge part of my life.
And you can read more about Melissa Ohden's incredible story by going to the BBC news site, bbc.co.uk/news.